The 80s and 90s of 20th century were truly golden time for the Japanese company Nintendo, when it was considered a trendsetter in the global video game segment. The video consoles it released at the time became incredibly popular and actually set the standard for this booming industry at the time. And in the 21st century, the company was by no means in poverty, remaining afloat despite all the setbacks and global cataclysms of a different kind. But few people actually know that Nintendo traces its history back to the end of the 19th century, and it began with the production of traditional Japanese playing cards. Yes, its founding and early decades are closely associated with the name of Fusajiro Yamauchi, whose successors managed to create a very powerful empire of electronic gaming entertainment. And here on Wealth History, we will tell you, how did they manage to achieve such impressive success? Well, really, how did they do it? Welcome to our channel where we uncover secrets and tell stories of influential as well as rich individuals and their paths to success. Now, let's continue. Keep watching. Huge changes. Fusajiro, have you heard the latest news? The emperor allowed card games. Exactly, said an old acquaintance of the craftsman Fusajiro Yamauchi, who traditionally came to talk with him a little at the end of the day. It's been a long time, since the time of the third shogun of the Tokugawa dynasty. Life's changing so rapidly and I don't even know if it's for the better or not. Sometimes you just can't keep up with all these changes. It's shocking, without a doubt. Yamauchi nodded his head, outwardly agreeing with his neighbor's opinion. It would seem that the civil war and the Meiji Restoration took place quite recently, and what is happening sometimes just makes your head spin. Well, firstly, the ban on contacts with gaijin was announced, then the population was allowed to trade with them and even leave the country. Previously, even for such a desire, people were immediately executed. In general, reforms followed one after another, and this caused irritation and hostility among lovers of the good old days. But Fusajiro himself was quite positive about what was happening in the country because, as they say in the East, changes are not only dangerous, but also full of opportunities. When the neighbor went to his room, the young craftsman thought for a long time. He came up with the idea that since card games were not allowed, the demand for playing cards would simply skyrocket. After all, before that, their production was prohibited, and although it was possible to buy an illegally made deck, it was not cheap and therefore there were not so many of them overall. The main thing is the idea. Yamauchi was decently good at drawing, and in the end he decided to try to paint playing cards for Hanafuda. Its variations have been known to Japan since the end of the 17th century by then, and they were secretly played all this time, while Fusajiro thought this was a good option. But he was well aware that he would not be able to draw many cards himself, and therefore it was mandatory to organize his own workshop, or even better, a company whose trademark will be known and recognizable to people. Yes, this requires initial investment and you still have to earn it, but the main thing is the idea itself, which is something he already has. A few years later, Fusajiro Yamauchi had the necessary money, and on September 23, 1889, he realized his dream. He registered a company called Marifka in his hometown of Kyoto. Everything was quite modest. The office and the workshop were next to each other and there were no problems with the delivery of finished products for sale. Though, as with the sales themselves, representatives of all walks of life willingly bought playing cards, since it was a simple yet affordable form of leisure. The company's revenue began to grow rapidly, and this stimulated an increase in production. Nintendo. Years passed and Marufka became known throughout the country. Let's add that in 1907, the authorities completely lifted the ban on gambling and the production of Western-style cards. Well, yes, if Westernization, then to the full extent. Now we urgently need to get permission. If we are the first to master this topic, we will capture the market, Yamauchi thought. I'll have to go to the capital again and talk to the right people. These conversations ended successfully. The license was obtained and the business went even more successfully. Fusajiro realized in time that his company needed to diversify, in modern way of phrasing it, and expand its activities, that is, to cover new markets. And then he decided, again in modern terms, to rebrand the business name. He changed the name to Nintendo Koppai. As he himself said, new skills are a new name. Why Nintendo? Yamauchi was asked by his old acquaintance, "Do you want to leave luck to heaven?" He shrugged his shoulders in response. "You can say so," he answered, "or we can consider that this is the Temple of Free Hanafuda. In any case, I hope that the new name will bring me good luck." It is an honor. And in general, his hopes were justified. The company brought a stable income and gradually developed. New stores were opened, first in Osaka and then in more cities. However, after a while, Fusajiro Yamauchi felt that it was time for him to retire. 70 years was a very respectable age in those days, but sad to admit, there were only daughters in his family, and according to the Japanese tradition, only a man could inherit his father's business, so he had to make a choice in favor of his future son-in-law, Shigeru Kanada. "You're about to marry my daughter, so I'm keeping an eye on you, and I see that you can run my company, so I want to make you my successor. But you'll have to move to our family and change your surname so that everything is according to the law and traditions." Kanada bowed silently. "This is an honor for me. I'll do everything to make your company successful, especially since it feeds the entire family," he answered. After that, Yamauchi lived for another 11 years, having managed to make sure that he had made the right choice. His son-in-law was quite successful, and when it was his turn to retire, he chose his only grandson, Hiroshi, as his successor. It happened in the first post-war years, when there was no time for games in the country, but the guy did not let his ancestors down. Moreover, he led the company permanently and quite effectively for the next 53 years, making it the Nintendo we know today. Yes, the right choice of successor is exceedingly important, and Fusajiro Yamauchi would surely be pleased with his followers. But even during his lifetime, Shigeru Kanada decided to develop another market segment, the production of toys, and created another company for this. In 1933, he merged the two into Yamauchi Nintendo NCO, a name that was known to Japanese people for the next decade and a half. Next level. In general, Fusajiro managed the company quite successfully, but at the same time he did not get younger, and in 1948 he suffered a stroke. After that, the question of his successor urgently arose, and the only candidate was his grandson Hiroshi Yamauchi, who was then only 22 years old. "He won't be able to run the company," Yamauchi's friends said. "He is too young. The workers are unlikely to listen and obey him. You know very well he had just come here, and they had been here for many years." "I have no other candidate," the man replied bitterly. "I never had any sons, and my grandson is also the only one. I hope that he will succeed. What other options do I have?" Reaching a new level and setting foot abroad. And the grandson really did not let grandfather down, unexpectedly for many demonstrating character and strength. Although immediately after joining the company, its employees staged a protest strike for him. But Hiroshi did not succumb to blackmail, but simply fired once and for all those who disagreed with his appointment. "I'm very sorry that I have to make such decisions," he said on this occasion. "But everyone should understand that there can be only one leader in a company, and if someone does not agree with him and isn't ready to obey to the rules, he should look for a job somewhere else." The riot on the ship was suppressed and new changes followed. Hiroshi changed the company's name to Nintendo Karuta and later established its new headquarters in Kyoto, because he understood the need for expansion and work for the future. A revolutionary solution. The next decade was productive for the company, but at the very end of the 1950s, Hiroshi Yamauchi went to the United States to adopt best practices. And then he realized that playing cards alone would not achieve much and he had to try other areas of activity. But only one out of all was successful: the manufacturing of toys and board games, adjacent to the main profile direction. Here, Nintendo offered a number of technical innovations that quite entered the market and in a few years made his company a major player. Meanwhile, progress did not stand still, and the 1970s were the time of the emergence of a completely new segment of entertainment: video games. The fashion here was set by the United States, and Japanese manufacturers could not compete with them for a long time until Nintendo got involved. In the year 1978, the company created a department dedicated to the development and sale of arcade games, which Hiroshi set the task of creating something universal, simple, and inexpensive that could evict competitors from the market. "We need to radically change the approach to this business," He told the young designer Shigeru Miyamoto, who was tasked with developing new video games, "We must give up profits by selling hardware, making it a tool for selling software, and it's on the outcome that the company will make its money." It was truly a revolutionary solution, a true all-in-one home video entertainment system that came with a variety of games. The Nintendo Entertainment System (NES) was a hit of the 1980s and its worldwide sales exceeded 60 million units. The games that came with it also contributed to its success, the most famous of which was the Super Mario Bros. Series. 3 generations. The NES was followed by more advanced systems, and although the company had to compete with the Sega Corporation, it managed to remain one of the main gaming structures in the entire world. And Hiroshi Yamauchi remained the president of Nintendo until 2002, then chaired the company's board of directors for another 3 years, but then left this post, giving way to others. In this unique way, starting off as a perfect idea, 3 generations of the Yamauchi family turned a small artisanal enterprise into a global structure with a capital of many billions of dollars. It is unlikely that the founder himself dreamt of such success, but it seems that he would have been pleased with the fate of his brainchild. That was Wealth History. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and in case if you did, like this episode, subscribe to the channel and check out other episodes we have on the channel. See you later.